Welcome to Tech Savvy Buyer, guys. Today I'm going to walk you through which console is the right fit for you and why you should be looking at one over the other. Let's take a look at them in detail coming up. So welcome back, guys. As you can probably tell, I am missing one console here, and it is very obviously the Xbox One S. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It is out as a loaner to a buddy of mine. So while I don't have the console on display here, we will definitely be covering that in this video. Now, again, like I mentioned, the purpose of this video is to kind of walk you through each console that you see here, including the One S, and go through the pros and cons of each console, the price, and where the value actually comes in for that console, and if it should be something you should purchase or not. Again, I won't say that yes, you should purchase this, or no, you should not purchase this, or yes or no, yada, yada, yada. I'm simply gonna make you a more informed buyer so that you can make a tech-savvy decision. No pun intended. Anyways, let's move on. So let's talk about the PS4 Slim. We'll work our way this way across. The PS4 Slim. This guy is priced in at $300, and for $300, you get a console that has a very small footprint. Essentially, of all the systems you see here, with the exception of the Nintendo Switch, this takes up pretty much the smallest amount of space that you can possibly use on a theater stand or your home theater device or a shelf or wherever it is that you're planning on using the system. So that is an interesting thing to keep in mind. Now, obviously, the physical form and factor of the console is not the main focus of today's discussion. Let's talk about the hardware inside it and what the capabilities are of the system. So let's talk about what this system can actually do. So one, it can play all kinds of PS4 games. You can use PlayStation Now's PS Gaming streaming service, and essentially you're able to access PS3 games, PS2 games, and some PS1 games as well. All those games are available on PlayStation Now, and you can actually stream them. And if it is a PS2 game or a PS1 game, you can actually download that game onto your console and actually play it, so you don't need to have an internet connection running, so you're not always streaming it and having an issue like that. Something that the Xbox also does very well. Now, in addition to that, you get access to the ability to play all the different exclusive games that come out for PlayStation. So if you have had your eyes set on Horizon Zero Dawn or the new God of War game, the new Spider-Man game, any of those games, that you can definitely play on the PlayStation 4. Now, in terms of resolution, graphics, and frame rates and stuff like that, let's jump into that in a little bit of detail since I don't want to go too much on it. Basically, all I would say in a nutshell is that the PlayStation 4 is a solid 1080p gaming console, which basically means that 99% of the time, the game that you're going to be running on this is going to be running at 1080p resolution, and you'll be getting at least 30 frames per second. Now, there will be some games that are better optimized to get you higher frame rates. However, that's not true across the board for all the different systems or all the different games, shall I say. So a solid 1080p, 30 FPS gaming console. Again, you get access to a very, very large library. You're able to use all different kinds of streaming apps on it, such as Netflix, Hulu, PS View. You have access to use those on the system. And so it can become like a one-size-fits-all home media system for you. Now, speaking of home media system, there are a few things that the system does not offer support for, which kind of make it challenging. But just before we jump into that, I do want to say one last thing that's pretty good that the PS4 Slim does offer, and that's the included technology for HDR, or support for HDR. So if you have an HDR-capable TV, whether it is a 1080p display or a 4K display, the PS4 Slim will look just fine, and the color saturation and the color gamut will look perfect. So HDR implementation on the PS4 Slim is actually very well. So even if you're watching a Blu-ray movie that is HDR, you can watch that on the PS4 Slim. Now, speaking of Blu-rays, the one thing that the PS4 Slim does not do is play back Ultra HD discs. Now, this may be, an interesting thing for people. It may not be an interesting thing for people. What I can personally tell you is that I'm not a fan of getting UHD disc. I would prefer to have a digital library of movies, which again, you can play digital files on your console with the use of an external memory stick, but it doesn't play back UHD discs if that's the type of collection you're looking for. So aside from the lack of inclusion of playing Ultra HD discs, the only other thing that this system lacks, which could be big for some people, is the ability to play things in 4K. Like I mentioned, the max resolution that comes out of the PS4 Slim is only 1080p. So you're not going to get a 4K resolution. You'd have to let your TV do the upscaling for that kind of gaming. And it doesn't support 2K gaming as well. So you're just getting a solid 1080p gaming console with an amazing game library and of course, support for PlayStation VR as well. You can use the PlayStation VR on the PS4 Slim. If I didn't call that out before, I do apologize, but the PSVR is very well capable to be attached with the PS4 Slim. So that pretty much sums it. You've got a whole bunch of things that you can do with it, and the main things you cannot do with it are playback movies in 4K on a disc or playback 4K gaming and get higher frame rates in that aspect. Other than that, you're pretty much covered. You don't need to stay online all the time to play games. You can play offline, and there's a massive game library that's pretty much appealing to millions and millions and millions of people. So now let's talk about the PS4 Pro, guys. The PS4 Pro actually offers pretty much every single thing than the PS4 Slim does, except it's got a much more boosted hardware configuration. And the boost in hardware allows you to do several other things that the PS4 Slim can't do. And one of those things is actually 4K gaming. In addition to 4K gaming, you can actually watch and stream apps in 4K as well. So Netflix in 4K is possible on this, whereas on the Slim, it's not possible. So if you have a system in your home that's all designed around 4K, like your TV, your home theater, you would probably want to pick the PS4 Pro over the PS4 Slim just because it actually allows you to use and adopt into that ecosystem much better than a 1080p system would. Now, that doesn't say that this is a full native 4K system, and the reason for that is pretty simple. The system itself is not actually fully powerful enough to deliver true native 4K gaming resolutions for all AAA titles. There are some select titles, and the list is actually pretty small, where games do run in native 4K, mostly indie titles and titles that a lot of people don't know of. Doesn't mean they're not fun, but most of the time you're going to be getting dynamic scaling through checkerboard rendering. In addition to that, the extra horsepower in the system does let you do a few other cool things. One of those cool things is super sampling. Super sampling essentially lets you render the game in a higher resolution and then downsample it to a different resolution. This is key for people who are not on a 4K display, who have a 1080p display, but still decided to pick up a PS4 Pro. You'll actually be able to take advantage of the extra power in the system to get better resolutions on a 1080p screen. So it's not going to make the resolution higher, obviously, since your monitor or your TV can only output a max of 1080p, but it will make those images look a lot less jaggedy along the edges, and your anti-aliasing effect would be a lot better due to the super sampling. In addition to the super sampling mode, you get access to boost mode. Now, boost mode is probably my favorite thing on the PS4 Pro, because what it will do is take games that were not originally enhanced to run on a PS4 Pro, and again, use that brute force to get you higher frame rates. So there have been several tests done to prove that the PS4's boost mode actually does work really well compared to the PS4 Slim across multiple different titles. Now, again, with super sampling, that isn't necessarily the case all the time. With super sampling, sometimes you'll have to take a dip on the frame rates because you're trying to get the higher resolution and look for better graphics over the case of getting frame rates. With the PS4 Pro, however, in terms of different games that support the PS4 Pro that have the PS4 Pro enhanced title on top of the case, you'll actually get options in most of those titles to choose whether you want to favor resolution, so get higher resolution in a standard frame rate, or if you want to support or favor more frame rates and smoothness is how they like to refer it. And that gives you a solid 60 FPS target on the console while keeping the resolution at a 1080p resolution. So yeah, you can use the power inside the system to either chase graphics, or you can either choose to use it towards frame rates. Again, it's not the case in every single game that's manufactured or made for the PS4, but it does offer an option that is available in several titles, such as The Last of Us, for example, or Neo, or even God of War, for example. So it's nice to see that the inclusion of that extra power is actually being taken advantage of by the developers that make games for all the different platforms, not just necessarily the exclusive games that are made for this library. So again, at $400, you get all the good stuff that comes in here, and you get the additional use of the boost mode, the super sampling mode, and the 4K apps and 4K gaming. Now, what it does still lack, as the PS4 Slim does, is an Ultra HD disc player. It's just something that Sony has decided to skip on altogether in this generation and not actually include. Now, that's pretty much the gist of it. If you're looking for a Sony console, you get access to all the library of games that are exclusive to the system, and of course that are available on other systems, with the exception of exclusives that are on these systems. So if that was not a tongue twister for you guys, I don't know what necessarily is. But long story short, the gist of it is, if you want a solid 1080p gaming console, you're going to pick the Slim. If you want a system that can run 4K apps and make games look up to 4K resolution, really, really great, kind of be in the middle ground, that's not true native 4K but has that, then you want to go with the Pro. Now let's move on to the Xbox. We're going to start with the Xbox One X because that's the one I physically have here available, and then we'll talk about the Xbox One S. Now the Xbox One X, this is by far the most powerful console made to date yet. And the reason why Microsoft does actually tout that feature is pretty simple. You can actually do native 4K gaming on this console on a number of games. Now, I do want to point out that not every single game that runs on the Xbox One X is native 4K. It does something similar to the way that the PS4 Pro does, which they call dynamic scaling. So they also use checkerboard rendering technically to get the image to display at 4K, even though it's not natively being rendered in 4K. Now, this happens a lot more on the PS4 Pro than it does on the Xbox One X. And you can look at a lot of graphical comparison videos on YouTube and other sources where you can see the differences in the Xbox One X's games and the PS4 Pro. Most notably would be Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 actually runs at a native 4K resolution at 30 frames per second on the Xbox One X, whereas it does not do that on the PS4 Pro. Now, it doesn't mean that the game doesn't look good, but if you put them side by side, you'll definitely be able to tell that this is an Xbox One X game. In addition to 4K gaming and being just a beast altogether, the Xbox One X can pretty much do everything that I told you that the PS4 can do. In addition to that, what it also has excellent support for is backwards compatibility, something that these two guys lack altogether. You can take an Xbox 360 disc or even an original Xbox disc, the one that came back out from like 2002, any of those discs, and put them inside here and it'll actually work just out of the box. If that's not cool enough for you guys, Xbox also offers Game Pass. Now, Game Pass in itself is a fantastic service, guys. This is what I would call their game streaming service, with the only kind of difference there being that you download the games and you're not actually just keeping the games streamed, such as how you have in majority with the PlayStation's format. While PlayStation does offer the ability to download games, that's only limited to PS1 and PS2 titles. On the Xbox One X, however, you're free to download every single game right onto your console. You will, however, need to maintain a connection to the internet just to validate your credentials and make sure that you still have your Game Pass subscription as active. Other than that, you're not actually going to be using any data off the internet to play those games that you have local. So you've got 4K gaming, much more powerful system. You have an Ultra HD disc player. That's right, guys. So like the PS4 and the PS4 Pro missed out on including a Ultra HD disc player. The Xbox One X took full advantage of that. You can take those games and those movies, specifically the movies for Ultra HD, pop them in here, and you can actually play this across anyone. So for those of you guys who are looking to get a 4K system that suits your needs and is able to play 4K movies, this is the system that you would pick. Now, in addition to that, there's a lot of other features that the Xbox One offers, or the Xbox One X offers specifically, that just you won't find on Sony's platforms. So another one of that is support for Dolby Atmos. Now, if those of you guys who are not familiar with Dolby Atmos, it's similar to HDR and is another implementation, as well as has spatial audio as well. Now, that is a really, really cool thing if you're a movie buff, or when game developers start actually taking advantage of Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. So Vision and Atmos both supported on the Xbox One X. In addition to that, you also get normal HDR support. You also get support for variable refresh rate. Now you might be thinking, what is variable refresh rate? For those of you guys who are not aware of that, now if you actually plug your Xbox One X into a monitor that offers FreeSync, you'll be able to mirror the resolution refresh rate that's coming out of the Xbox and that's also coming out of the monitor, similar to how NVIDIA and AMD have with their graphic cards, G-Sync and FreeSync. The Xbox One X will actually take advantage of variable refresh rate, and that'll result in less to no screen tearing at all. And screen tearing is basically when you're rotating the camera around and the system is trying to keep up and you get half of the first image displayed and the other half. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll notice it right away when you see screen tearing. And although it's not a very common problem on consoles, it's nice to see that the Microsoft system is actually offering support to avoid that problem altogether. And you can pair this, like I said, with the FreeSync monitor, which just makes it a much better feature to have. Even if you don't use it, it's nice to know that you're actually able to do that. And in addition to that, you can actually output resolutions in 2K. So you're not stuck at just doing a resolution at 1080p or 4K. You can output resolution in 2K right in the middle, which is a pretty sweet spot for a lot of people who do gaming on monitors. So if you're going to use a gaming monitor to pair with your console of choice here, the Xbox One X would probably suit it the best in terms of taking advantage of the hardware that your monitor may or may not have. Now, if all that stuff isn't enough, like I mentioned, you have Game Pass, you have the additional power in the system, you have support for Ultra HD discs, you have variable refresh rate support, and of course you have Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. The other thing that I thought was really cool about the Xbox One X is that they're offering support for keyboard and mouse very soon, and some games already have this ability. You can actually plug a keyboard and a mouse into your Xbox One X and use that just kind of like how it is with the PC. Another cool thing that's about this system that you don't get with the other systems is that since it's Microsoft's console, they have a huge implementation of Windows 10 in the system, and you're actually able to download a lot of apps that you would be able to on Microsoft Store through your PC directly onto your Xbox One, including apps like Kodi and Spotify, just to name a few. Now, while you can get Spotify on these, you do not have access to Kodi, which is actually a really key app if you're looking to do home theater kind of stuff and you want to set up, your own movie server kind of stuff. Now, the key differences between the Xbox One X and the Xbox One S, which is not displayed here, mainly just comes down to power. All the other features that I explained that are available on the Xbox One X are also available on the Xbox One S. The key difference being, like I mentioned, the amount of power. With the Xbox One S, you're looking at a system that's partially a solid 1080p gaming console. And the reason why I say partially is because there's still a lot of games that still render between 720p and 900p on the Xbox One S that even the PS4 Slim outbeats. So you're looking at resolutions that are going to be roughly around 1080p and maybe below. While they do have support for 4K movies and it does output those movies in native 4K, the only other thing that the Xbox One S does do is also kind of upscale games in 4K. And that is something that you can actually see on their website as well, where Xbox One S does do 4K upscaling. So the native resolution is not really going to be there. It will upscale games into 4K. So if you want to save a little bit of money, you can definitely go with the Xbox One S. The Xbox One S can be found, or the 500 GB model can be found for about $250. If you go for the 1 terabyte edition, you're looking at $300. Now the Xbox One X always retails for $500. Again, when you find it on sales, like during Black Friday or other different special holiday events, you can pick this up for $400 as well. A very, very solid deal for all the stuff that you're getting with the system. The only thing that I would say is a con for the Xbox ecosystem as a whole in reality is the games. And why I say the games, it's not because they don't have all the games that every other console pretty much offers with the exception of Nintendo there, but because of the lack of first-party exclusives that Xbox has delivered this generation in gaming. Sony's just outbeaten the competition when it comes to exclusive first-party games that you cannot find on other consoles. So you can't play God of War on this or Horizon Zero Dawn, but rest assured, the latest Far Cry's, the latest Assassin's Creed, the Resident Evil, all those other games look and play much better on the Xbox One X. So if you're not, into single player games and you could care less about Spider-Man and God of War, I would not even tell you to look at a PlayStation, but move more towards an Xbox One X where you just get much more bang for buck. And personally, I think even the controller with the offset joysticks is a lot nicer as well. So that pretty much sums up the PlayStations and the Xboxes. Like I mentioned, the key differences is being power between the two lower tier edition, so like the Xbox One S compared to the One X and the Slim compared to the Pro. Your main difference is really on power. Most of them are able to do the same thing that their Pro versions and beefed up versions do. Now, my most special console here, the one that I actually played the most recently, is the Nintendo Switch, guys. Now, the Nintendo Switch, this is perfect for anyone that's looking to do portable gaming and who's not really worried about graphics. This screen only offers 720p resolution, and when it's docked into the actual console dock system and you display it up on a TV, that's when you get 1080p resolution. Now, Nintendo is probably the only console manufacturer and game manufacturer that can pretty much prove that resolution and graphics are not everything, and it really comes down to gameplay and what's fun to play. So keep that in mind even when you make your purchase decision across the board of the different consoles that I explained. Sometimes graphics and resolution don't necessarily matter, and as in the case with the Nintendo Switch, that is definitely true. Now, the Nintendo Switch, again, comes with a Joy-Con system, essentially, that lets you take a controller and break them off into separate pieces so that two people can actually use the same controller that came with the system out of the box. Out of the box, you have everything needed to have a multiplayer party, which is one of the reasons why the Switch is very, very popular. And much like its predecessor, the Wii U and the Wii, it does have support for motion control. So if you're playing Mario Kart, you can do this kind of stuff. Or if you're playing Wii Bowling or fishing or any of those type of different games, it does support the Wii motion controls. But perhaps The biggest interesting thing I'd have to say for the Nintendo Switch, and obvious, is its portability factor, guys. You can take this console with you anywhere you go. The battery life on this, depending on the brightness level settings that you have and whether you're connected to Wi-Fi or not, can last anywhere between 3 to 5 hours. Again, that depends on your screen brightness. If you keep this boy clocked up to full brightness all the time and you're connected and gaming on it nonstop, you're probably going to get about 2.5 hours to 3 hours max out of this, which is why I would highly suggest anyone that does pick up a Nintendo Switch to make sure that you pick up a power bank with it as well. Now, priced in at $300, I think this may be a little overpriced. However, there's a couple of cool things that you can do with this system that you cannot do with any of these guys. Of course, portability being the biggest one, right? I can play a game of Mario or Zelda or even Doom or the newest Wolfenstein game or FIFA or any, just to throw a bunch of different titles out there in the bathroom if I choose to. And that's not something I can do with these unless I'm doing remote play, which of course was another feature that both of these systems can do. Actually, all of these systems can do, but the PlayStation can actually do that over internet while the Xbox cannot. So being able to play your games in any room of your house, or while you're on the subway, while you're out in the park, while you're sitting in a car, anywhere you want, is only possible with the Nintendo Switch. And that's definitely a feature worth noting. Now, the other thing that's really cool about this is that this has recently been hacked. So if you're one of those people that's into the homebrew scene and you want to add third-party apps or maybe even back up your own games and store them on your memory card, you can do that with the Nintendo Switch. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this. You can add Super Nintendo emulators, you can add GameCube emulators, Nintendo 64. There's just a whole bunch of variety of stuff that you can do with the Nintendo Switch ever since the game has been hacked. Now, that also means that if you want to pirate games and use pirated games, you can actually do that, although I would never recommend or endorse anyone to do such a thing. But if you have your own copy of those games and you don't want to carry those cartridges around, you can always back those up and put those in the memory card and carry those along the way. So for $300, I would still say there is a lot of value to be had with the Nintendo's Switch. However, I think it would have been priced more attractively at around the $250 to $200 mark. $300 is a little bit pricey for what you're really getting out of the system, and just in terms of hardware power, but the features that it offers are not similar to the features that you get here. So with a growing list of very, very exclusive titles and remasters from the Nintendo Wii U era, the Nintendo Switch pretty much has a much better library of games in 2019 than when it first did in 2017. When the system first launched, you really only could play Zelda Breath of the Wild or Bomberman or a couple other more obscure games. With the exception of Zelda Breath of the Wild, there weren't a lot of games that you really could play. It wasn't until Mario Kart 8 came out and Super Mario Galaxy came out where the system really started to take off more towards the end of 2017. However, now with a lot of support for third-party games from other developers, such as I mentioned with Doom and Wolfenstein, and of course FIFA as well, you can actually play a lot of games on this that you wouldn't have been able to play on the Wii U. One of the biggest issues that you had with that. So again, who would really buy the Nintendo Switch? I would say anyone who's not really into being fanatic about graphical resolution and power and just wants to pick up a system that's fun to play, that has better support for multiplayer that's local. All these systems do a fantastic job at online multiplayer, but when you want local multiplayer and LAN multiplayer, if you have a party, you have people coming over, and you want to just throw in Mario Party, you can't do that on these consoles. This is the only system that you can do that on. And it's a ton of fun. So it definitely has carved its own niche of type of gamers that they're targeting, and of course kid-friendly games as well. So if you're a parent watching this video, this is the system that I would recommend you choose, just because 90% of the games that you find for this are very, very kid-friendly and don't have a lot of violence. Now, again, just to sum everything up here, again, this was a pretty long video and I try to give you as much detail, and I may have missed some things on some of these consoles, so feel free to correct me in the comments below, guys. It's a lot to cover. But nonetheless, this is what you want to buy for the kids at home, or the people that are casual gamers or not hardcore gamers and like to travel a lot but want to have something that they could do while they're traveling, and essentially just want to have a system that they can take anywhere they want when they go. I would look at this more as a portable console versus an actual console that's docked all the time. Now, the Xbox systems. The Xbox One S system is probably the best system to buy for, again, a casual gamer who's probably going to use the system more for its media capabilities than its gaming capabilities. The One S is a solid media player. With the ability to play Kodi and the support for actual Ultra HD discs, it makes the One S offer an astounding value for $250. Again, that's like the price for most standalone Ultra HD disc players. And of course, if you ever want to play a game, you can just pop in a game in there and play an Xbox One game, whether it's the newest Halo or the Forza Horizon series, or even the new upcoming Gears of War. So definitely a solid value in that. Onto the Xbox One X, this is where the hardcore gamers are going to come in and spend the extra money just to get that extra level of detail and the better frame rates when it comes to gaming. Games look and play much better on the One X than they do on the One S, than they do on the Pro, than they do on the Slim. This is the system where you want to go all out with the highest budget and buy what the best or closest you can actually get to PC gaming, guys. This is the closest you'll get to PC gaming when it comes to graphics and resolution and frame rates. The PS4 Pro is for the person who actually loves PlayStation's first-party exclusive games, but also wants to play them in better resolution and better frame rates than they would be able to play on the PS4 Slim. So if you're one of those, again, hardcore gamers that's not really looking for media capabilities, this is where you're going to be going for if you don't care about media. Same thing with the PS4 Slim. If you are a gamer on a budget and you don't really care about high resolutions, but you want just access to all the latest and greatest games and the exclusive titles that the PS4 offers, that's the system that you want to pick. So of course, pricing amongst all of these are pretty similar. You can get a Switch, a PS4 Slim, and an Xbox One S all around the $300 price range. So it really just comes down to what kind of gamer are you? Do you care about media? Do you care about portability, or do you care about exclusives? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself before picking one of those systems. When it comes to these two, priced in at $400 and $500 respectively, now it comes down to, I'm more of a hardcore gamer, what's more important to me? Do I want better performance in a pure gaming environment that's sort of 4K but not exactly full native 4K? Or do I want more performance that does 4K and does media as well, just for an additional $100, and I can do pretty much all the stuff with it, but I miss out on the exclusive games that PS4 is putting out this generation. That's pretty much the gist of it, guys. Again, I hope this video was helpful. I hope it enabled you to make a much smarter decision and be a tech-savvy buyer, no pun intended. But I hope this helped you guys figure out what console it is that you want to buy and what makes sense for you. But personally, my choice is all of them. This is the system I'm playing the most right now, and just goes to tell you that even though I have all of them, this is getting most of my time right now. Other than that, guys, let me know if I missed something on these systems. Again, there's too many features on each console to really cover. Let me know what you think is awesome. What console would you buy after watching this video? And let me know if this was helpful or not. In any case, of course, I will engage with you guys in the comments below, as I always do. If you like this video, drop a like on it. And if you're new to this channel, do consider subscribing. It definitely helps this channel grow. So other than that, I will leave you guys on that note. Hopefully this was helpful. Until then, I will see you on my next video. So you guys, peace out.